Hello, welcome to the webinar. I see a handful of people are starting to come in and welcome you. And I'd love to see you, if you could, just put your name in the chat roll bar at the bottom in the box underneath the main screen here. Let us know who you are. Let us know where you're coming from, name of your tournament, if you have one, name of your organization. We'd love to get to know you a little. And we'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Thanks a lot. So I see Steve Wicker's joined in. Thanks, Steve, for introducing yourself and welcome aboard. Illinois, we actually have done one of the very first apps we did was for a tournament, the Grove United Memorial Day Shootout. That was in Illinois. So maybe that's something that you are familiar with, an event. I'm sure it's a very big event in the Chicago area, and hopefully we'd love to do something similar for you. But let's get through with the presentation first. I see the screen is sort of flickering a little bit, which is a little bit annoying. I'm hoping that's going to go away. That's an issue with Google Hangout rather than with us. It seems to be going blank for just a half a second and then coming straight back. And hopefully that won't disrupt the presentation too much. Not quite sure what I can do about it right now, but maybe it'll stop soon, or if not, hopefully it won't disrupt too much. So stand by, a couple of minutes more. Okay, I'm going to start. It's not going to want to be aware that everybody's got a busy schedule, even on a Friday afternoon. So I'll start right away. I'm sure some folks will be joining us as we go through it. And we will make a replay of this available. So people step in 10 minutes late and miss the first few slides. It's not going to be a problem. They'll have a chance to catch up when we send out the replay. So welcome aboard. And what we're here to talk about a little bit is changing the game. Mobile is changing the game in all kinds of areas of our lives, and sports is just one of many. And we've got a little presentation. It's based on an ebook that I put together about a year ago on how the sports industry, and particularly how tournaments are being affected by the mobile revolution. And essentially what we're here to talk about is, and apps and mobile strategies are all very cool, but really the bottom line is how to make your tournament more profitable using proven mobile marketing strategies and without spending what used to be just a small fortune to get an app developed. The very first apps we heard of in the tournament space cost somewhere in the region of $10,000 to develop. And that wasn't that long ago. That was just a couple of years ago. And I refer to it as the old-fashioned way, which is kind of ironic when we think of apps because it's a very cutting-edge industry. But it did literally used to cost many thousands of dollars to put an app together not that long ago. You are in the right place if you run a sporting event. And if you're tired of pulling your hair out all weekend long, trying to get time-sensitive information out to people who are at the event, we all know email is one way to reach folks, but it's not always the best way, particularly when it's a particularly time-sensitive issue, such as a weather delay or playoff implications and all those things. You're in the right place if you're looking for creative new ways to engage sponsors and maybe even attract some new ones that might not otherwise have been interested in sponsoring your event. You're in the right place if you see a mobile app as a solution, but you've looked at some of the numbers and you've looked at some of the costs, going back to that previous slide, and you just can't justify that kind of expense. And you're also in the right place if you're just interested in learning about mobile. If you're in that sort of tire kicking phase, that's perfectly fine. I'm happy to share what I know about the industry and what I've learned in the last couple of years. And going forward, obviously there's an awful lot going on in this space and we're all learning as we go along, and I'm happy to share what I've learned so far with everybody here. Here's me, Michael Jones, and I have been around the sports space for about 20 some years. As you can tell, I came from the UK, came to the United States in 1990. I've been the publisher of Soccer New England and Soccer Tournament Guide and Lacrosse Tournament Guide. These are websites that are specifically focused on the tournament space. I've also been in the professional game. I used to be the general manager and was the founder of the Cape Cod Crusaders, which once won the national championship for the USL. And that's something I was very proud of back in the 90s. Soccer. My kids played soccer growing up, and I was on the board and the director of coaching for the Sandwich Soccer Club. And that club runs a very big tournament over Memorial Day weekend called the Cape Cod Challenge, and I helped run that for a number of years. And then most recently, in the last couple of years, we've gotten involved in the mobile marketing space, and we specialize in affordable, and that's the key word here, affordable mobile apps for the sports industry. We're well aware, having been in the industry for a long, long time, that a lot of the people in this space, a lot of the organizations in this space are non-profits. They don't have huge budgets. And while, as I say, the very first app we saw was in the $10,000 range, the vast majority of people in this space can't even think about affording that kind of investment. So we've honed in on a space in the marketplace where we think clubs and organizations that work in the soccer, lacrosse, basketball, baseball space can afford the apps that we put together. So here's what I'm going to go through, a number of things, and I want to make it very sort of concise and to the point. There's 4 reasons why the mobile revolution is a particularly good fit for the sports industry. I want to go through 5 very specific ways that an app can improve your bottom line, because we can all put a nice, cool app together and all be excited about something, but unless it actually improves the bottom line of your tournament, it's an expense rather than an investment. The 3 biggest mistakes that people make when they're considering their own app, and we've been around for a few years now, and we've seen these mistakes get made over and over again, and the game-changing technology that's relatively recent and has made apps affordable for just about everybody. So we'll talk about all those 4 things, and let's start with the ebook that this was actually this presentation was based on. If you stay till the end, I'll send you a copy of the ebook. It's a light read. It's about 19 pages long, but it does basically encapsulate everything I've learned in the industry the last 2 or 3 years that I've been involved in it. And it does give you a pretty good insight. If you're in that investigative stage where you're just sort of looking into the industry, trying to figure out if it's a good fit for you, I think you'll find it quite a useful document, not only to have for yourself, but to perhaps share with your fellow board members and other folks who may be involved in a decision like this. So I'll tell you a little bit about my story and how it sort of relates to what we're going through right now. So back in 1998, as I mentioned earlier, I was the general manager of the Cape Cod Crusaders. And one of my jobs at the time, despite running all the team and sponsorships and all those things, was to set up the very first website for the Crusaders. And you can imagine it was a pretty rudimentary thing, and took ages to get set up, and it was really only a handful of pages. It was really quite a project. Not long after that, I left and became publisher of the Soccer New England, and I started working with clubs and tournaments. And this was back in the late 90s, and as you can imagine, everybody was out there putting websites together, and this was the start of what would become the internet bubble of the late 90s, early 2000s. Newspapers like Soccer New England. In fact, we used to work with a lot of clubs that used to run printed ads in their newspaper and magazine. Clubs were typically organized by phone trees, but within 2 years, just about every organization or sporting event that we were dealing with at that time would have its own website. So a very important period in the information revolution that we've been going through these last 15 years or so. And now, as we all know, having a website is pretty much a requirement. And the question I would ask is, would you think twice about attending a tournament if you found out that they didn't even have a website? And I would argue that the answer to that question is probably yes. You would certainly question how well organized this event is going to be if they don't even have an up-to-date website. We don't only expect it to be a good website, we expect it to be up-to-date, we expect it to be user-friendly, we expect it to be constantly updated throughout the weekend. So there's an awful lot that we now expect in the information and technology space. But if you fast forward to now, this was the 1990s and what's gone on in the last 15 years, I'm seeing exactly the same thing all over again, only in the mobile space. We're currently in the middle of a revolution that's changing the way we do everything. And I want to sort of illustrate that with a couple of photographs. I could throw tons and tons of statistics at you, and I do have a few stats, which I'll show you in a later slide. But I did want to show you this because there's two pictures here, which I think illustrate very nicely what has gone on in the last few years in the mobile space. This top photograph was taken in 2005, and it's a photograph of St. Peter's Square in Rome on the day that Pope Benedict was inaugurated as Pope. And you can see bottom right-hand corner, just here in the bottom right-hand corner, I think one person has a cell phone, but that's pretty much the only one you can see. If you look below, it's just 8 years later, and just about everybody has some kind of a mobile device. And that has happened in the space of 8 years. And that was the day, same location, St. Peter's Square, the day that the current Pope, Pope Francis, was inaugurated. So it gives you some sense of just how quickly this revolution has taken place and how emphatic it's been. Just look at the number of cell phones that have taken over in the 8-year space between those two photographs. And I did say we'd throw some stats at you. I don't want to overdo this, but 90% of all Americans who own a cell phone have it within reach 24/7, and they look at it on average every 6 minutes. And I have to confess, I'm one of those folks. I sleep with my cell phone, not because I'm necessarily so attached to it that I can't get away from it, but it does have a very good alarm clock in it, and it's a very useful way to make sure we get up in time in the morning. 26 hours for the average person to report a lost or stolen wallet. It takes 68 minutes for them to report a lost phone. So our phones have now become more important to us than our own wallets. And of course, we're seeing our wallets as things like Apple Pay start to take off. It takes 90 minutes for the average person to respond to an email, and it takes just 90 seconds for them to respond to a text. And this is important because one of the things that our apps have is the ability to send out unlimited push notifications, which to all intents and purposes are text messages. Useful way for folks to people who organize events like tournaments to communicate with people in a very real-time way. And as I say, 90 seconds for the average person to respond to those. And then the last one, people have an average of 41 apps on their phones. And this is up from last year. It was only 32 last year. I actually know some people who have 75 or 80. I'm one of them. I'm not necessarily I work in the app space, but nonetheless, I have about 75 apps downloaded onto my phone. So it's something that people are definitely doing more and more of. And it's something that I think for an event like a tournament, they're very, very inclined to download an app and use it for the duration of the weekend. So I would argue, just as websites were in the last 15 years, that mobile is rapidly becoming a requirement. And while I asked the question, would you think twice about attending a tournament or a sporting event if you found out they didn't have their own app? I'm the first to concede that the answer to that question right now is probably no. You're not going to necessarily say, well, I'm not going to that tournament, they don't even have an app. But I would argue that perhaps 3 years from now, 5 years from now, people will feel the same way about an app as they do now about a website. And you would seriously question maybe in a few years' time, if a tournament doesn't have their own app, what kind of tournament is it? How well organized is it? How far on the cutting edge is it? And is it the kind of tournament that I want to send my team to and take my children to? So just something to think about. As I say, I don't think that's the case right now. I'm not arguing for 1 minute that people are going to say, oh, I'm not going to that event because they don't have an app. But I do think that in a few years' time, if you don't have an app, a handful of people, and quite maybe a quite significant number of people will say, how come? Why don't you have an app? What kind of event is this? So bear that in mind as we sort of go through the rest of the presentation. Sports and mobile. Why sports and mobile make a particularly good fit? The first reason is instant updates. We all live in a very fast world. We want to know the score of the game, unless, of course, we've recorded it on TV and we're trying to avoid the score until we get a chance to watch it. We saw some TV commercials around the World Cup on that subject. But nonetheless, typically, we want to know the scores of the game. When I first moved to this country, I used to have to wait until Monday to find out how the scores of the soccer games in England had gone over the weekend. I used to rush out in my lunch hour, go to an out-of-town newsstand in Boston and get the results. I can tell you, it was not fun not knowing how my beloved Manchester United had done over the weekend until Monday. So we do want to know, and we want to know quickly. Mobility, of course, we're in the mobile space, so mobility, my kids would call that a duh. But we are constantly on the move, and we do want to know what's going on, even though we're on the move. We don't necessarily have time to go back to our home office to check our email or check a website before we go off to soccer practice or lacrosse practice or what have you. So we want it going on. We want it on our mobile devices while we're shunting between office and practice and all the other various things we have to do. Apps and mobile is very visual and interactive, and sports lends itself very well to those sorts of things. It's obviously a very visual endeavor with lots of great graphics and colors and action, and these are all things that work very well in the mobile space now. They didn't used to. Only a few years ago, when the BlackBerry was ruling the roost, that wasn't the case. But now it's iPhones and Androids, and they've got very, very high-end graphics, and sports lends itself very well to that. And then there's affinity. We have an affinity with our sports teams that we perhaps don't have with any other industry, even other industries within the entertainment space. We have an affinity with our sports team that we would never have with the record company or with a movie studio. So affinity is important, and because these are our personal devices, we call them personal devices. The idea that a sports app or a sports website being shown on a mobile device, a personal mobile device, is going to build affinity and make the team feel that much closer to us. So let's go through those one at a time. Instant updates, push notifications. I mentioned those earlier, and they're frankly one of the biggest selling points we have on our apps. They are unlimited. You have no limit on the number of push notifications you can send. And what we can see on here, as I say, if the technical difficulties are still plaguing us, I do apologize, but we've got here a couple of very time-sensitive push notifications that this particular club has sent out. This is the Select soccer club from just south of Boston, and they've got a tweet here, or a text, or a push notification that says, due to the forecasted thunderstorms later today, training will be indoors at the South Shore Sports Center. Hope to see you there. The kind of message that you could only send by push notification. It's literally a forecast. It's practices at 4 o'clock. The forecast at 2 p.m. is for thunderstorms later in the day. Let's move practice indoors. Sort of thing that our apps and the push notifications that come with them lend themselves to very, very well. Then for an event like a tournament, schedules and standings. We want to know while we're on the go what the games are, what time the game is, what field it's on. If there's a late change, we want to be notified of it as quickly as possible. And all of these things are easily done in the format of an app. Of course, the most important question of all is, did we make the playoffs? Here's an app we did for the Jefferson Cup, and here you can see over to the left, you've got the scores, and over to the right, you've got the standings, and those standings are updated real time throughout the weekend, clearly visible on the app, and everyone who has the app can quickly see whether they made the playoffs and what seedings they may have had and what fields those games are going to be on once they make the playoffs. Another benefit, of course, is mobility, and we've got two apps here. One is one that we did for the Rush Soccer. They have a festival in Colorado every year, and there's a map that shows just about every facility that you might need if you're going to this event. So all the fields where the games are taking place, all the hotels, you can see just about that the hotels are designated with little beds. There's a medical center which is designated here with a cross. All the fields, all the practice facilities, all the meeting rooms, because there are a lot about this event, and all of them are on a map, and the map gives you GPS directions from wherever you are. So if you're lost in the wilds of Colorado and you know you need to get to the field, all you need to do is bring up the app and you'll get turn-by-turn directions. The one on the right is one that we did for the Falmouth Road Race, and that's also a terrific event. It's on Cape Cod every year. It's a running event, and here's a map of the course. And of course, you can get directions to the start line, to the buses to take you to the start line. If you want to meet your loved one at the finish line and figure out a way to get back to the car in a sleepy seaside resort, it can be quite a challenge with 10,000 people running in a race. But nonetheless, that is all there, and it's all mobile, and it's something that works very, very well in that context. And of course, they're visual and interactive. Apps are it's really important actually as we get more into doing these apps. We've learned a lot about Apple and iTunes and how they are very particular about how apps look. They're very keen on design and aesthetics. We've all heard the stories about Steve Jobs and how meticulous he was about design of the Apple and iTunes products. And the same is true of the apps, as a little bit of his legacy lives on in the iTunes App Store. So it's very important that we have high-end designers who design beautiful apps and get them approved and get them into the app stores. So it's not a space for amateur designers. It's something that you really need to do very, very well. But you can see nice visuals, very exciting, and really do a great job of presenting your brand in a positive and colorful and action-packed light, which I think is also very important for your own branding purposes if you have a tournament or some kind of sporting organization. Also visual and interactive, people can send in photographs. This is something that one of the apps we built, this is an app we built for the Mega Cup in Miami. It's a soccer tournament, and they had a tab on there where kids could submit photographs, either of their event, or it could be of some crazy face paint contest they have, or the crazy decorations of their minivan or what have you. And you could even get sponsors on board with this. Sometimes sponsors might jump in and sponsor a photo contest, so you can submit the app or submit the photograph through the app. Somebody could moderate them and make sure that they're appropriate before actually posting them on the app. And then you could have a voting situation where people vote for their favorite photographs and prizes awarded by a local sponsor. So lots of different ways that you can use it in that regard. And of course, nothing says interactive like social media. We can put links into any one of the social media tabs you may have, and we can use the cell phone and the app to encourage all kinds of sort of social media interaction. And affinity, that's the last of the 4 reasons. And of course, an app is something that people feel a real attachment to. Their mobile device is something that they are very personally attached to. And the same is true of their various sports teams. So whether it's a semi-pro team like the one on the left-hand side, the Fusion, or it's a road race and a favorite athlete taking part in a road race, we've got an athlete profile there, or just a local U club, any number of those would build a personal relationship. A personal device allows you to build a personal relationship, and we feel that our apps help people to do that. So we talked about here's what you'll learn today, and off the mobile revolution, 4 reasons why it's particularly important for sports. Next one is 5 very specific ways that an app can improve the bottom line of your event. Of course, that's the main reason we would do something like this, and here are the 5 reasons. Happier sponsors, in-app advertisements, and this is something that's starting to gather a lot of steam now. Happier participants, increased merchandise sales, and more registration. So we can go through those one at a time very quickly. We've got 3 here that just to give you some idea. The one in the middle is New Balance, and they are sponsors of the Falmouth Road Race. And it's not just New Balance, but the New Balance Foundation. It's a charity organization to bring sporting events and sporting facilities to underprivileged kids, and they want to use the app as a way to sort of promote that. The one on the left is one that we did for a soccer tournament, and it's called the Pepsi International Cup. But if you look closely, the entire app has been designed in Pepsi's colors, the blue and the red of Pepsi. And if you look closely on the guy right in the very center, he's wearing the soccer jersey, and the main sponsor on that soccer jersey is Pepsi, and you can see the Pepsi logo on the front of his jersey. So just a nice, subtle way that we include the every aspect of this app, and it's something that they were very, very happy to be part of. And the one I like the most is the one on the right. This is another Falmouth Road Race sponsor, and they are Stockman Shop, and they are using the app. That's a chain of supermarkets in New England, and they are using the app, the mobile app, to promote their own mobile app, which I think is a really nice synergy. And of course, people can literally download it right then and there from the App Store onto their mobile device. So just a really good way to use our advertising and sponsorship opportunities to promote their own mobile strategy. And it's not just corporations. This is a couple of sponsors that are non-corporate. They are actually both Convention and Visitors Bureau type advertisements. So we had one sponsor, or one client, I should say, where the entire app was paid for by the local Conventions and Visitors Bureau. And all they wanted for funding this project was mention all the things you can do in and around the tournament. So the client basically got a free app. They got the CVB to pay for it, and the CVB got a lot of additional tourism dollars, presumably from giving folks on their mobile devices a whole list of various things they could do, attractions that were in the area. Here's a testimonial. This is from the Grove United Memorial Day Shootout. This is Bill, and he says he loves the apps. The vendors and the sponsors loved it. They had 17 sponsors, 5 vendors, and 9 food suppliers. So just make a mental note of those numbers, because that's the next slide, and let's talk a little bit about that. 17 sponsors, 5 vendors, and 9 food suppliers is 31. And even if you just went out and got $99 per advertiser, you're looking at $3,000 in potential revenue. I know a lot of tournaments that do books, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. And just the printing cost alone could easily be $3,000. So anything you get in the way of sponsorship dollars would be eaten up by your printing costs. And that's simply not the case with our apps. Our apps are nowhere near that expensive and can become a profit center quite quickly and quite easily if you go out there and solicit some in-app advertisers. So let's talk a little bit about those books, because this is how it used to be. This is actually one of our clients, the Virginian. They don't actually have an app of ours, but they do work with us in some of our other businesses, and they printed. And you can see on the one on the right hand side, there's an advertisement on the right, on the left, and there's the U16 boys schedule on the right, and it's all printed on paper, and it works perfectly fine if you're in the 1990s. But I argue that there's a much better way to get that information out there in the modern day. Here's another one for Little League. Same sort of situation. I don't see any ads on this one, but you can see it's player profiles, it's text, it's all on a printed format. And I would argue that there's a much better way. You can put all of this information into an app. You can put it in a section that's called an advertisers or sponsors section, or you could put it a little more subtly in here's some things to do in the area. This is a family fun tab that we did for a soccer tournament on Cape Cod. You could just put a list of restaurants down, and you could present it as if it were just information, but not necessarily making it particularly obvious that every one of these people has paid for the right dollars for Mike's Pizza for the chance to be the top listing on the restaurants tab. That's a pretty good deal for Mike's Pizza, and it's a pretty good deal for the tournament, and it more than covers the cost of developing the app. Area shopping. The one thing you do need to do, though, when you're out there selling sponsorship, and here's a tip for you, is to make sure that your advertisers are mobile ready, because you can see here the two examples. The one on the left hand side is the Miami Seaquarium. This is the Mega Cup in Miami, and this is the list of their sponsors. And you can see they've got a mobile ready website. As soon as the website recognizes that it's a mobile device that's looking at it, it's called responsive, mobile responsive, and it renders a different image than it would if it were just a regular laptop. The one on the right hand side doesn't have that capability. It's not a mobile responsive website, and although you can see images, you can't really navigate a way through it. It's too small. You have to pinch out to read it and slide over, because now you can't see the whole screen. It just becomes a much more difficult user experience. So as you're sort of out there getting sponsors and advertisers involved in your app, it really is a good idea to make sure that they've got a mobile ready website. Otherwise, it's not going to be the best user experience out there. Apps put tournament-specific offers together. This is an app on the left-hand side. It's Dick's Sporting Goods. This is an event that we did an app for called the Lakers Fall Classic, also in Illinois. And they have a special 20% off at the local Dick's Sporting Goods store. And you can see the very faint on the right hand side here on the Lakers Fall Classic logo, and it's a special deal just for people who are involved in that tournament. The same is true of the Hempfield Fall Classic on the left hand side, another 20% off. And this is an event that takes place in Pennsylvania in November, and same deal, they get 20% off if they take their phone in and show that coupon to the clerk in the store. And we've all had that situation where we've been at a checkout somewhere. We know we got a coupon, but we left it pinned to the fridge, or we left it on the dining room table, or we even left it in the car, and it's only 20 yards away, but there's a queue of people behind us and we can't run out into the parking lot to get it. And you kind of missed out on that coupon and that discount simply because you don't have the piece of paper with you. But if you've got it right there on your app, you can find it very quickly while you're standing in line and claim your 20% off right then and there. So it's a really neat way to get coupons into people's hands. Happier participants. This is the third reason we think that you can genuinely affect your bottom line. Obviously, better communication, push notifications, clear directions to everything. These are things that make your event a more enjoyable event for the people who are attending. And everybody is always concerned about making sure the event is as well organized as it can be. And once you've got an app and you're using it in a creative way, not just to give information, but potentially to use for sponsor messages, you can use those push notifications to sort of give people ideas for what they can do, where they can eat, those kinds of things. And it's just a nice touch that makes the whole event a more professionally run enterprise. So it's just something that I think is going to reflect very well on your event and on your organization. And all of that leads, of course, to less stress for you. Here's a Lehigh Lax Fest. It's a testimonial from John Galucci, who did an app with us, and they really felt that the app lowered their level of stress, that they had an ability to turn around information in a much, much quicker way, get information regarding seeding and all those next fields and where to get the teams lined up for the next games. So the Lehigh Lax Fest app allowed us to communicate in real time with parents, coaches, and athletes. We were able to post results within minutes of games ending in situations where seeding and then quick turnaround for teams to find the next field, they were able to execute flawlessly. So something to bear in mind. It does lead to less stress for you if you've got happy people. You don't have people complaining and bitching about how terrible the organization was. Merchandise sales. I've seen a lot of people use our apps. We can actually put a merchandise tab in the app, and it's something that we're doing more of as time goes on. Back in the early days when apps were primarily made for cell phones, there wasn't a lot of call. People weren't necessarily that interested in shopping on a cell phone. It's too small, fingers get messed up, and you can't necessarily put things like credit card information in that easily. But now more and more of these apps are being read on tablets, and you can certainly use a tablet for shopping, and I do it all the time, and lots of people do. So you can use your push notifications leading up to the event to encourage pre-sales. All throughout the event, just let folks know about particular items that are going quickly. If it's hot, t-shirts. If it's cold, sweatshirts. And you may want to just push those events and let folks know. And then you could even have an in-app order form for your merchandise sales. So it's just a good way to hopefully drive more sales and just give people a more convenient way to do their shopping. More team registrations. The stats that we have, and we've been doing this for a few years now, so we've got some pretty good data on this. 40 to 50% of apps will still be on the user's phone 6 months after the event is over. So 6 months later is, of course, about the same time that you're starting to think about next year's event. And it's not at all inconceivable that you could use a push notification, particularly if you've kept in touch with folks throughout the year, not every day, not even every other day, but certainly maybe once a month, just sending out a push notification saying, hey, we're thinking of you, we're getting ready for next year's event, we'd love to have you just sign up. And then when applications open, send out a push notification saying, don't forget our event, you can come by, sign up, and maybe offer a discount for people who sign up on an early bird basis, and just use the app as a way to drive team registrations. You can also you can also get a little bit more creative with your push notifications throughout the year. You can use that for your sponsors. You can use that for all kinds of different messaging. As I say, it's important not to overdo it, because people will delete your app if you bother them, if you pester them. But as I say, keep something going maybe every 3 or 4 weeks, Just let folks know you're thinking of them. Use it as a way to sort of get sponsors out there. Maybe there are some coupons that you could send out to people as a sort of thank you for attending your event. And then when that 6-month window opens up for start promoting for the next tournament, you can certainly use push notifications to alert them. So we've done the first two, the mobile revolution and 4 reasons why it's particularly important, 5 very specific ways that it can improve your bottom line. Let's talk about some mistakes, because this is actually something that as you're starting to sort of go down the road of whether or not you want to do an app, I think if I can sort of throw a few of these common mistakes at you, I can help you avoid an awful lot of grief. So it typically takes us 4 to 6 weeks to develop an app. So you must allow enough time. There's a process involved, not just in us developing it, but then getting it approved by iTunes. Apple is a pretty difficult company to work with, quite frankly. Google is not, strangely enough. Google is very straightforward. You can get your Android app approved within about 72 hours. But Apple can be hard. They generally take about 2 weeks to approve it, and sometimes they reject them. And sometimes, frankly, they don't really necessarily even tell you why they rejected them. And it can be a bit of an ordeal. So give yourself plenty of time. We recommend you get your app published at least 2 months before your event. So if you're thinking of a 4 to 6 week development time frame, plus 2 more weeks to get it approved, and you still want to have it out 2 months before your event, you need at least 3 and preferably 4 months prior to your event. We literally just did a deal this week from somebody who runs a tournament in May. They want to have their app up and ready by 1st of January. And that's their wish. And it's a very, very big tournament, and they've given us the time to do it, and we're happy to take that. The difficult ones are when someone calls me up about a month before their event and says, can you get me an app in time? And even more frustrating, frankly, are the ones that call me up 6 months before their event, but they don't actually make a decision whether they want to do it or not until 6 weeks before their event. And then I end up doing a lot of sleepless nights and long weekends, and that's not my favorite way to work. So just bear that in mind. If you are serious about doing something, give yourself at least 3 months, preferably 4 months before your event, to give everybody enough time to put a stress-free project together without pulling each other's hair out. Another thing is thinking about it as an expense. There's no question that developing an app costs money. It's not as expensive as you might think, and we'll get to that in a few slides' time, but nonetheless, it is an expense. But if you think of it as an expense, then you're thinking about it the wrong way. There's no question that this should be a profit center. You ought to be able to make more than enough revenue, both in the direct sense of, hey, buy an ad on my app, or in the indirect sense of improving communication and encouraging early registrations. But either way, you ought to be able to make enough money off of your app that it becomes an investment, not an expense. And if you can't do that, then we shouldn't do it. And I think we can crunch some numbers quite easily, and we can help you crunch some numbers. But if we can't figure out a way to turn it into a profit center, then I'd be the first to admit that perhaps the timing is not necessarily right. So bear that in mind. Don't think of it as an expense. And then the third one, I get this a lot. I get people saying, oh yeah, I'm going to have my web guy give you a call and talk about this. And that's not to say I don't like web guys. I love web guys. Some of my best friends are web guys, but it's not really a technical endeavor. Yes, there's a certain amount of tech involved, a little bit of coding, a little bit of HTML, but they tend to come at it from an IT angle, and really, this is a marketing decision. This is something that you decide to do based on whether or not you think it makes sense from a marketing point of view. And very often I get folks say, oh yeah, I'd love to think about that. I'm gonna have my tech guy give you a call. And we generally don't close those deals, to be honest with you. They tend not to go anywhere. So bear that in mind. It's not really a tech thing, it's a marketing thing. And we can talk you. That's why we call our company Game Day Mobile Marketing, not Game Day Technology or what have you. So bear that in mind. So those are the first 3, and then the last one I want to talk about, we're coming to the end here, the game-changing technology that has made apps affordable for just about everyone. Before I get into that, let me take a quick sip of water because my voice is starting to go. Hold on a second. Okay, so game-changing technology. I've been around the publishing business for an awful long time, and I want to just sort of take you through a very, very brief history lesson. Once upon a time, we had desktop publishing. And of course, if you wanted to be good at desktop publishing, you needed to know layout, you needed to know the technology, you needed to know all about fonts and colors and the difference between CYMK and RGB. And if you're not in the graphic arts industry, a lot of that may not necessarily mean much to you. But trust me, I was, and it was a very complicated process for quite a long time, until some very smart folks at places like Microsoft and iStudio and Page Plus came up with software for the rest of us, the folks who, you know, don't have that graphics background and just want to put pages together. And now just about anybody can put flyers and magazines and entire books together quite easily. Same is true with websites. Back in the day, you needed to be a designer, you needed to be a techie, you needed to know search engine optimization, you needed to know code, and it used to be a real pain in the neck to put a website together. And that's why we used to call webmasters and gurus, we used to use those terms to actually describe those people, because it was such a mysterious endeavor. And now we don't do that, because now we've got things like WordPress and Weebly and iPage, and we can put a website together in 30 minutes quite comfortably. You may want to pay a professional if you want a better one, but nonetheless, the average person can put a website together. We're rapidly getting to that point in the app world. There was a time, and it wasn't that long ago, when it was really quite a complicated industry. Every app had to be built twice, once for iTunes and once for the Android SDK. All functionality had to be coded from the ground up. It also helped if you knew design, but frankly, the kind of folks who are good at coding tend not to necessarily be good at design. So you perhaps needed to have two people, a designer and a coder, and often they would not necessarily see eye to eye. And it was really quite a big project, which frankly explains why it used to cost $10,000 to $15,000 to put an app together. Now it's not like that. There are some app building softwares that are out there. When we first got involved in this business, we used Sky Builder. They've very much fallen by the wayside, but there's App Maker, there's Snappy, there's others out there that you can use. And the one we use, and the one that we're most familiar with, is Business Apps. We use this, it's our favorite app building software. And the proliferation of these kinds of softwares has made apps affordable. Anybody now can have an app and have it be affordable. And you can even build your own apps. And there's pros and cons to that, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But definitely the game-changing technology that has really made apps affordable for everybody. And it's relatively recent, within the last 18 months or so, that just about anybody can afford an app. And now it doesn't cost you $10,000 to $15,000 anymore. It doesn't take months of coding and testing and debugging. And you can change your app after it's built. Once it's approved, we recommend that folks sort of do whatever changes they want to do after it's been approved. And you can even recycle your app. So we have a lot of our clients who have multiple events, a soccer club that runs maybe 3 different tournaments throughout the year, and we build them one app. And then once the first tournament is over, they strip it down, they put new logos in, they change the colors, and then they've got a brand new app for the next event. And then that event is over, and they do it again for their third event. So this is something that you can do, and it makes the app even more affordable. Now you're spreading the cost out across multiple events. So all of these things are now possible. But, you know, it's still a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. We do this for a living, and we're pretty good at it, but it is hard work, and it is something that you want to not take lightly. You still need to have a good eye for design. You don't need to know Photoshop. It does help. And certainly if you've got someone around the office or an intern who's got a good eye for design and a bit of knowledge in graphic design, it's certainly very, very helpful. But I don't use Photoshop, and I still manage to develop apps quite comfortably. You do need to understand the functionality, and you need to understand what your end users want it for. And this is why I go back to what I was saying earlier about it really is a marketing decision rather than a tech decision. And tournament directors know perhaps better than anybody what kind of information they want to put into their app and what kind of information their end users are going to be looking for. We've done a lot of work in the tournament space. It's pretty much our specialty, and we've gotten very familiar with that now. You do still need to deal with iTunes, and that's not easy. And we're getting quite good at dealing with them. We've built about 75, 80 different apps now. We know a little bit about what they're looking for and what red flags they're going to raise if they see things they don't like. And of course, you do still need to license the software. And we've spent thousands of dollars over the years on the software. We love it. It's very, very good, but it's not cheap, and it's something you need to consider. So you can build your own app, but bear that in mind. You may need professional help, and that's where we come in. So we built over 100 apps, mostly, as I say, about 75 or 80 of them in the sports space. We have a top-notch design team that really is very good at knowing how to put the best branding out there for your tournament. Obviously, we start with your website, we start with your logo, and we do an app that is consistent with your branding. They're colorful, they're engaging, and we're really quite good at it. And of course, we've been doing it for a while now, so we've gotten good at it, and we've developed templates and best practices to build sports apps perhaps more efficiently than anybody else out there. And we'd love to do one for you. There's no question about it. That's part of why I'm doing this presentation. Obviously, no obligation. And even if you're just here to find out about the mobile space, we're more than happy to share that information with you. But at the end of the day, we'd love to build an app for you if you decide to go that route. Cost, it used to cost $10,000. We talked about this earlier. I crossed it out, it's hard to read, but $5,000 to $10,000 was not unusual to spend on an app. Obviously, that's not what we're charging here, because the entire business we set up was based on the fact that we could do it more affordably. We then put together pricing in the sort of $1,500 to $2,500 range. That's when we first got into this space, we were building apps for about $1,500 to $2,500. It very much depends on how many bells and whistles you have, but that's roughly the price point that we started at. And then more recently, we've kind of putting ourselves into a subscription model. So people now pay us $99 a month and a one-time setup fee of $990. That's what it used to cost. And that's what, in fact, what it still does cost. We literally sold an app 2 days ago at that price point, that $990 price point. But for this webinar, and for people who are on this webinar, we've got a special deal going. So you still pay the $99 a month subscription, but that setup fee literally cut in half, $495. So it's something that's very heavily discounted. And I'll be honest with you, I always get suspicious with people when they say, oh, we've got this great product and it costs $1,000, and but I'm gonna let you have it for half price. So in the interest of transparency, I feel I should explain exactly how and why we're able to sort of cut that price in half. For the longest time, ever since we've started this business, every product we have and every service we sell, we've always sold through a sales force, and that sales force is paid either a commission or a salary or some combination thereof. And that's fine. That's part of our cost structure, and we generally price our products with an eye to, you know, how we're going to make sure that that commission gets paid to the sales rep. This is different. We're selling these by webinar. We don't actually have a paid sales force on this particular event, and therefore it's a savings. There's a cost savings there, which I'm more than happy to pass on to you. So we don't have to pay a commission. We don't have to pay the marketing costs if we buy this through the webinar. Now, if folks start saying, okay, I'm going to call the office and ask a whole bunch of questions and have someone call me back, then the account will get assigned to a rep, and then I have to pay them a commission. So this is a webinar only price, but it is something that I'm more than happy to pass on to folks. If this becomes an efficient way for us to sell these apps, then there's a considerable savings on the cost side of it, because I won't have to pay those sales reps for this particular transaction. And that is why we're able to charge literally half price for that. But as I said, we did literally 2 days ago sell an app for the $990 price point. So it really is a special deal only for this webinar. So there's, in addition to that price break, there's a bunch of sort of other benefits that we're offering again during this webinar for people who are interested in jumping on board right now. Obviously, we talked about sponsorships, and that's a key part of what makes this an affordable, in fact, more than affordable, a profit center in its own right. And we do have sort of a generic media kit that we can pass on to you, or customize it with your logos and your information and pass it on to you, and it'll help you to sell some sponsorships. In addition to that, we can do a fast turnaround demo app. Now, what this is a shell of an app, but it's got your branding on it, it's got your colors on it, and we do a little video presentation which you can literally email to people. We put it together as a screencast link, and you can send that out to your sponsors, just to sort of show them what the app is going to look like. It's not finished yet, it's not published yet, but it's enough of a show and tell, if you will, that you can send it to potential sponsors and use it to sell sponsorships long before your app is published. So it's a really useful thing. I've done them for a handful of clients, and they've really loved the fact that they could use it to go out there and sell sponsorships before the app is even finished. And then once you sell sponsorships, there is an ad component to it. There are places in the app where you can place ads, and very often the people you're selling sponsorships to don't have the graphic design skills to create them. We have specs, and we can certainly send them out to anybody who needs them, but we will happily build 5 free in-app ads for you, value $25 each. We normally charge people $25 to do these ads for them. First 5 free of charge if you jump in as part of this webinar presentation. So 3 bonuses in addition to the substantial price break. So that's where we are. We're coming to the end of the presentation. I'm not sure why you came here today, but I'm assuming you run a tournament or some kind of a sporting event, and I'm assuming that you at least thought about an app, and you perhaps wanted to just find out more, which is why you showed up here. Maybe you've looked at the cost of developing it yourself, but you found it too expensive, and maybe you've even looked at some of those DIY solutions that I talked about, but you're not sure you had the time and the expertise to do it. So those are your choices, and what we're hoping is that, to sum it up, your event needs an app. I believe it needs an app, and if it doesn't need one now, it certainly will very soon. A well-conceived app and a well-conceived mobile strategy, because it goes beyond an app, and an app is really just, point one, but it becomes a profit center, not an expense. And if you want an app for your event, there are really three ways to go about doing it. You either pay a high-priced developer to code it for you for the ground up. Most tournaments simply aren't in the budget for that kind of that kind of work. You can do some of the DIY stuff out there and build your own app, and there are certainly some pretty good programs out there, but there's a learning curve, there's no question. And then you can hire us, and what we do, and I'm not going to say we're going to run this thing for you. We're going to build you an app. We're going to do the design and the architecture for you. That's what that one-time setup fee is for. And then we hand the reins over to you once the app is built. And the monthly fee is essentially a license fee to use the same software that we use to build the app for you. And then you can sort of take over. We're here to hold your hand and make sure that you've got the information you need to make the changes, but we hand it over to you once it's built. So it's a little bit of a hybrid between the first two options. One is completely do it yourself. The other is completely have someone else do it for you. We sit somewhere in the middle where we'll build it for you and get it into the iTunes store, deal with all those headaches with Apple, and then we'll hand it over to you once it's built. So that's really the options you have. And of course, I hope you'll choose option 3. So what we can do is we can get you started for $495. That's the price point we talked about here, for your one-time setup fee. And then what will happen is that we'll build you an iTunes compliant app. It's going to be consistent with your brand. It's going to be customized to exactly what you're looking for within the constraints that are put out there by iTunes, and we'll have it for you within 30 days. We'll take care of the submission process to get it approved. And we'll give you access, once it's approved, to all kinds of training materials, videos, and downloads that are going to help you manage it. And of course, you'll always have access to us if you want to have a one-on-one conversation. But nonetheless, most of the information that you'll need to run the app will be available to you in the form of a membership site and training videos. So that's what you get for it. And all you need to do is go to our website, tournamentapps.net, and there is an order form there where you can sign up for this. So what you'll see there, here's what you'll see. You can see our actual setup fee. It says $990, and then there's a monthly fee. It says 0 for month 1, and then the $99 starts after 30 days. If you type in the webinar 495, that is the price 495, and webinar, the word, and it is case sensitive, so make sure the W is uppercase and the rest of the word is lowercase. If you type those in, what happens is magically that $990 turns into $495, the same price point for the subscription, nothing changes there. And then you can go in there and get that 50% discount based on the promotion we're doing with this webinar. And then you come to a page here where you say thank you for the order and give us some information. We'll take some very, very basic information that we'll need from you. Send us your name of your tournament, your website information, and if you can send us a JPEG or a ping or a GIF of your logo and email it to the address there, michael@gamedaymobilemarketing.com, we'll get right on it. And obviously on that website, I'm sure there'll be contact information, and we will get information that will be in touch with you very quickly and talk about your needs. And although, as I say, we're definitely out there to find out what you're looking for and what your needs are, but I must stress that the most important thing is to use our expertise to give you an Apple compliant app. A lot of times we have conversations with people and say, I want it to do X, Y, and Z. And we get back and we say, it can do X, Y, and Z, but let's not do it until after it's been approved, because it just is too risky and we don't want to run the risk of rejection. So that's one of the things that we expect to do after the approval process is over. So that's how the order form works. I want to leave you with another testimonial. This is from Karen Kearns, who runs the Cape Cod Challenge. This is one of I'm having a blast with the app. The response from attendees has been fabulous. We had to make several schedule changes and updates, so the push notifications have been great. We have not had a single person ask us, where are the boards? They literally took their boards down. They used to have a big manual update of schedules on a massive board, and they use the app. The app saved us time and headaches and alerted people much faster and better than we could have ever done with the usual text and phone calls. So this is one person who's just raving about the app, and that was a couple of years ago. She's had the app ever since and still uses it to this day. So here's what you do. Go to tournamentapps.net, there's the order form right there. We'd love to build an app for you. What I am going to do, I know a lot of tournament directors have to sort of report to boards and various other members, and we are going to send out a replay of this, and hopefully on the replay the technical difficulties that we've been having will be better, and we won't have those. And what you can do is share that with the board members, but do it quickly. I've got this price point up. That order form will be up for maybe 48 hours, 72 hours, but I'm not going to necessarily leave it up long term. It's something of an experiment for us, is this price point. And if it works, then it's potentially a future way that we're going to start selling these things, but it's not going to be up there forever. And if it's something you want to do, and again, particularly given that so many of the people we speak to have often left it too late. If you've got an event early in 2015 or even in the spring of 2015, we should be talking sooner rather than later, particularly with holidays coming up and Christmas, New Year, and all those good things. So bear that in mind. If you are interested and you have an event in the first half of 2015 and you want to take advantage of this special deal, we should chat as soon as possible. So that's it. If you have any questions, there's a chat bar down there. I'm more than happy, but otherwise I'll hang around for a couple of minutes and chat. If you want to, you can give me a call or reach me at that email address, michael@gamedaymobilemarketing.com. More than happy to chat with you about your needs, but do bear in mind that this is a relatively short-term special offer that we're doing as part of this webinar promotion. So type in any questions if you've got any, and if not, we'll wrap this up. Thanks very much. One question that I often get is, do we have to keep the app live year round? And often people are looking for a way to sort of save the $99 a month. If you've only got one tournament, it's tempting to say, oh, I don't want to spend that year round for an event that only happens once a year. We strongly recommend that you do keep the app live year round. Having said that, if you want to cancel, you can cancel. It's not something that we can necessarily stop you from doing. But once you cancel, the app goes dead. Anybody who's got it on their phone, it will just become a dead app, and eventually they'll realize it's dead and they'll delete it from their phone. And if you do want to bring it back for next year's event, we have to go through the whole process of getting it reapproved by Apple, which frankly, if you can avoid it, it's not worth it. And you do lose one of the great benefits of the app, which is year-round communication via push notification with your potential clients or potential participants. So an app does give you something which an email typically doesn't do. Most tournaments, when they're dealing with emails and communicating with their participants through email, are only emailing either the coach or the team manager. They're not individually emailing every single parent. Whereas if they have an app and everybody on the team downloads the app, then they have an opportunity to reach out to everybody on that team rather than just counting on the coach to do their communicating for them. So it really is a benefit, and you lose that if you don't keep your app live year round. So do bear that in mind. And another question we get quite a lot is, should the app be charged for to the end user? How much should we sell this app for to the end user? To which I normally yell at the top of my voice, no, don't do it. Do not charge for your app. Your app should be free. The days of people paying even 99 cents for an app are pretty much over. And in the last year or so, I've downloaded apps for some world-class events, from Wimbledon tennis to the Ryder Cup golf app to the Super Bowl, and I didn't pay a dime for any of them. So if I can get a Ryder Cup app for free, I'm not sure I'm going to be necessarily tempted to pay 99 cents for a small youth soccer tournament. It's not something that people do anymore. And I did have one client who, against their better wishes and against their advice, did insist on charging for their app. And they ended up with a few dozen downloads and they made a few bucks, but a typical app on our a free app that we put together will get 2,000-3,000 downloads, and this one got 2 or 3 dozen. So it's an incredibly not to download it. Surprisingly so. We all think 99 cents is not a lot of money, and if we could get 2,000 people to pay 99 cents, wouldn't that be wonderful? But truthfully, it doesn't work that way. The apps in the App Store should be free, and if you want to fund them and turn them into profit centers, the way to do it is through sponsorships and advertising. So those are the only questions that I have in front of me. Nobody's got any more from the chat roll. So I'm going to wrap this up. I thank you for coming. It's a Friday afternoon, and you've given up an hour of your time. I really do appreciate that. And as I say, do let me know if you have any questions. Drop me an email. I will be sending out a replay, and I will also be sending out the ebook, Changing the Game with Mobile, which is what this presentation was based upon. That should give you all the information you need. But as I say, if you do want to have, I'm more than happy to answer them via telephone, via email, or whatever way you want to be in touch with me. I'll leave the replay up, and I'll leave the order form up for about 72 hours. So sometime around maybe Monday night, Tuesday morning, we'll be taking it down. So if you do have to share this information with people on the board, do let them know that it's a relatively short-term offer. Thanks very much, and have a great weekend.